Ladies and gentlemen, this is something that you can't make up. Alec Baldwin to make first post-tragedy appearance at New York Awards Gala. He is going to serve as the master of ceremonies at the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights event. Was Jeffrey Dahmer busy? I mean, this was just like hiring Jeffrey Dahmer as a host on the cooking channel. My God. Did they try the Manson family and, their schedule was booked, so they got Alec Baldwin? What's going on here? It's bad enough that they gave Andrew Cuomo an Emmy for his atrocious handling of you-know-what. Okay, when they blamed Trump for last year or 2 years ago now, they ignore the fact that Whitmer, Newsom, Cuomo, Phil Murphy, who could even be worse than Cuomo, presided over the absolute most catastrophic outcomes. But getting back to Alec Baldwin, they gave Andrew Cuomo an Emmy. Meanwhile, he, I think, has a criminal charge against him now, and his genius brother was fired from CNN. They're all, look, these people are like millionaire, morally superior liberal Democrats in Hollywood telling you how to live your life, condemning, pontificating, preaching, giving these sermons on morality and decency. Everything is within the paradigm of Trump is worse, even though Trump never ended anyone's life. Alec Baldwin accidentally did by pulling the hammer back, apparently in his devious, potentially deviant mind, from the instructions of the cinematographer who would not have given him the instructions. It would have been the director, who is silent. His silence is, deafening, because the director would have been telling Alec Baldwin what to do, not the cinematographer. The cinematographer wouldn't have been telling Alec Baldwin to pull the hammer back slowly, and then oopsie. Like, what did he expect also? I explained this before. He's lying. He's lying to police. He either has a modified firearm that the police got that he didn't use, but he did pull the trigger of the firearm. And then he says he thought that she fainted, and we'll get to all the lies. I mean, we can get to all the lies later. That would be a 2-3 hour segment. But let's just read this here. I mean, you can't make this up. The actor will make his first public appearance since the October 21 tragedy on the set of his film Rust, serving as master of ceremonies at Robert F. Kennedy's Human Rights event. So, this is where we're at as a society. An actor ends the life of a cinematographer, an outspoken liberal Democrat. He even has his political party on his Wikipedia page, which is very bizarre. He pulled the hammer back, aimed in her direction, then blamed the cinematographer hours after a safety walkout, a protest of camera crew, where one person actually quit a protest because of unsafe working conditions. You can't make this up. Just days after, this is a Hollywood Reporter, just days after the first sit-down interview following the Rust. Okay, and by the way, if you watch my segment prior to this one, he said, I can't, the sheriffs have told me I can't say anything. It's an ongoing investigation. And then he tells all in an interview 3 weeks later. He's lying about everything. It was very likely a chaotic, nightmarish set where safety protocols were thrown out the window, and he accidentally aimed and fired at the cinematographer because he was aiming at the camera. She lost her life, and it was an accident. But it was an accident where he was at fault because he was the executive producer on a set with practically zero safety precautions. And he never checked the firearm. The armorer was not in the church. The armorer did not hand him the firearm. The assistant director did, who was now, in a very bizarre, embarrassing way, trying to say now that, his hand was outside of the guard and he never pulled the trigger. It's like, well, why did people say that he yelled cold guns? That makes no sense. But anyway, nothing makes sense. They're all lying because a lot of people are culpable or liable in a criminal sense. Alec Baldwin was making an absolute mockery of law enforcement in Santa Fe, New Mexico. An absolute mockery. He probably knows in a criminal sense his goose is cooked, and he's just trying to get ahead of the narrative, trying to win some kind of points in the court of public opinion among morally superior liberal Democrats. These people are clueless about firearm safety. They think that firearms go off themselves. They think that the Colt 45 is a sentient being that can decide what to do. And so they don't realize that the only way to fire the Colt 45, it's a single-action revolver, is for Alec Baldwin to pull the hammer back and then pull the trigger. Other than that, of the firearm, other than that, he couldn't have fired the weapon. What he's saying now is that he must have had a modified firearm, and that still points to him being liable because he would have purchased the modified firearm as a producer. Now, if his defense is, I didn't know there was a modified firearm, I didn't know that two live rounds had been fired 5 days before the tragedy by my stunt double, I didn't know the armor wasn't in the church, so, I mean, all of these things that if that's his defense, fine, but everyone knows he's lying. The issue that I have, in addition to Hilaria's endless, Instagram love posts, and they're like kissing under the mistletoe. Now, I mean, they basically lived normal lives after he accidentally ended someone's life. So it's pretty unbelievable. This is the man that was telling you how horrible Trump is. Trump never ended anyone's life. Not one person. If you want to blame him for you-know-what, mashed potato brains, Biden presided over more lives lost. So utilize the same level of judgment, the same standards of judgment, and, what do you have to say about that if you want to blame Trump? But Trump never ended someone's life by pointing a Colt 45 at them. Alec Baldwin did. Now, he thinks he's just going to get away with everything. He thinks that because he is introduced so much doubt and that he's so out in the open and that he's basically hiding in plain sight that he'll have enough powerful people around him to protect him from legal or criminal, civil or criminal repercussions. The issue, ladies and gentlemen, is the following. A lot of people now are either lying alongside him to cover their own behinds or trying to help Alec Baldwin further his bizarre, nightmarish, not hilarious, but bizarre and devious and disingenuous and conniving fantasies. He did pull the trigger of the firearm. He's lying about pulling the hammer back and it going off by itself without him pulling the trigger of the firearm. He's lying about that. He could have given the FBI or eventually law enforcement and then the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who they have the firearms and the ammunition in Quantico, Virginia, I believe. They're trying to do analysis on all of this, but they likely don't have the evidence. They set up the armor almost certainly because the armorer was the person who gave the firearm that he's said to have used to police. So they're trying to throw her under the bus. They probably gave her a different firearm, and if they find out it's a different firearm, then Alec Baldwin can simply say, well, so it wasn't my fault. I didn't know. I left. I don't know what happened to the firearm. All I know is that, it went off. And so they could have given him a different Colt. They could have given law enforcement, they could have given Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the armorer, a different Colt 45 that wasn't modified. The different Colt 45 than the one he used, where the ballistics don't match up with the bullet, and he could then say, hey, that's not my fault. I don't know what happened to that firearm. But here, this is a human rights event. This is why fossil fuels are at an all-time high when Democrats devote their lives to combating climate change. Everything they do is actually the opposite of what they claim to uphold. You're talking about the biggest buffoons and imbeciles, but they're very wealthy. And they're very good at fabricating a media narrative. The reason Hollywood is now embedded within the Democratic Party is both live in fantasy worlds. They both create fantasy worlds also. Okay? That's, the land of make-believe is the Democratic Party and Hollywood. They're the same thing. Everything they claim to stand for, they work for the opposite to take place. Here you have Alec Baldwin. I mean, look, Juicy Schmolier, Michael Avenatti, Chris Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, Jeffrey Toobin, Eric Schneiderman, Anthony Weiner, Alec Baldwin. So, I mean, look at, it's like liberal males gone wild. It's like the VHS tape. And it starts off with Zoom and Toobin. But anyway, so the event put on by Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights will be hosted by, with Vice President Kamala, it will be hosted by Kerry Kennedy, with Vice President Kamala Harris delivering a virtual keynote address. So the Vice President of the country is now going to be with somebody, well, the criminal investigation part they don't care about. So they don't care about criminal investigations. But Alec Baldwin is almost certainly going to be charged with the crime. But then again, look what they were all saying about Juicy Schmolier and Rittenhouse and all that. So Democrats in power right now will just blindly go and try to further any media narrative they think is politically useful. They don't really care about truth at all. They don't care about truth. Not really. They don't care about truth at all. It's all about if you can convince enough people for them to gain votes, that's all that counts. They don't care about truth. Which is why George Stephanopoulos gave Alec Baldwin a forum to lie about the woman that he whose life he accidentally ended. The cinematographer never told him to pull the hammer back. The cinematographer never told him to pull the hammer back while he was practicing a cross draw. If you believe this, you're a gullible fool. But anyway, you're going to have Kamala Harris delivering a virtual keynote address. You have a human rights event where Alec Baldwin is the MC. I mean, they should simply invite Juicy Schmolier also. They should, you know what? They should have it on Zoom with Jeffrey Toobin as the MC. How's that? They should do that. Okay, that would be a very, very good event. Why don't they? Whoa, this is a human rights event with Alec Baldwin. I mean, have you ever heard of anything so absurd in your life? Like I said, was Jeffrey Dahmer busy? This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. And they're not going to bat an eye. You have to understand. The way they work is, so Trump is worse. If there was a nuclear annihilation, if there was a stock market crash, which there will be, nuclear annihilation, they would say, oh, at least Trump's not tweeting. So everything is graded on this morally relative, very sad, pathetic, nightmarish curve where as long as it's not Trump, because they have a psychological problem with Trump, 73 million Americans didn't listen to them, voted for President Trump, and will vote for President Trump again. Mashed potato brains Biden is being propped up by every single media outlet, from MSNBC, CNN, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Atlantic, BuzzFeed, Vanity Fair, the Daily Beast. It's a public relations monstrosity. He still has a 38% approval rating, mashed potato brains. Because everything he does, the opposite took. If he wants to combat climate change, we now have record highs in terms of oil prices and natural gas prices. I mean, fossil fuels are in greater demand now. Alec Baldwin apparently is in greater demand for the human rights event. This man, I'm telling you, this man thinks that if he could just weather the storm, if he could just evade criminal charges, and if he gets criminal charges and then doesn't get convicted, oh my God, he'll be like a Hollywood superstar. So he's probably convinced himself that, because you have to have an ego the size of the ever-expanding universe to be Alec Baldwin. I mean, there's no shame in his game at all. So he probably thinks, look, I'm going to be the master of ceremonies at a human rights event. How do you define human rights? Lying endlessly about accidentally ending a woman's life? Is that human rights now? It probably is. They gave Andrew Cuomo an Emmy. You're not taking my Emmy. They gave Andrew Cuomo an Emmy. Chris Cuomo tried to silence and go after the accusers of his brother. These are the most deviant people on the planet. And they're telling you how bad Trump and how bad half the country is. I don't know what to say anymore. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. A human rights event where the master of ceremonies is Alec Baldwin. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe to this channel. Hey, we're at 189,000. We're on our way to 200,000 subs. Tell your friends about this channel. Hit subscribe to the Stock Market Crash channel. I'll be doing segments either later tonight or tomorrow on that channel, starting it up again. And read my article in the Federalist on the upcoming stock market crash. If you want to support my work, ladies and gentlemen, if you've lasted this long, my Patreon is below in the pinned comment. Thank you so